Let me make an announcement based on Article 251, Paragraph 4 of our Rules of Procedure, and to inform you that there was no objections to the 9 addendums that were made at the opening of the plenary yesterday, so that is deemed to be adopted, and we will continue our agenda now, and that is a Commission statement on the situation in Azerbaijan, violation of human rights and international law, and relations with Armenia. I will give the floor to Commissioner Schmidt on behalf of the Vice President of the Commission, High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. Commissioner, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Monsieur le Président, honorable members, today's debate is taking place less than 3 weeks before the beginning of the COP29 UN Climate Change Conference in Baku. The conference will gather world leaders and the international climate community to advance on the global climate agenda. But it will also draw the world's attention to the conference's host country. Our debate today is therefore very timely. COP29 is an opportunity for the Azerbaijani authorities to demonstrate the commitment to their international human rights obligations. It is an opportunity to reverse the worrying trend of the past year of an increasingly shrinking space for civil society, intensifying repression of independent media and dissenting voices, and the growing number of arbitrary arrests. This House has drawn attention to a number of particularly unsettling cases, including the fate of Kubat Ibadoglu, Ilamis Guliev, Bakhtiar Hayeyev, Alasgar Mamadi, and Anar Mamadi. There are many more, including since this summer. Baru Samadov, a young scholar and peace activist studying in Prague, who was arrested while visiting family in Azerbaijan. Our position is clear. The government of Azerbaijan should release all those who have been detained for exercising their fundamental rights, including journalists, human rights defenders, and political activists. Torture and ill treatment are absolutely prohibited under international law, and any reports of abuses should be promptly and impartially investigated. The authorities must ensure due process, dignified treatment of all detainees, and access to proper health care in accordance with international standards. We in particular urge the government to lift Dr. Ibadoglu's travel ban without delay to allow him to access the medical treatment he needs abroad. We also hope that the Azerbaijani government reconsiders the travel ban imposed on 76 PACE members merely for how they voted in the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly. Azerbaijan's participation in the Council of Europe is in the fundamental interest of all Azerbaijanis and all of Europe. COP29 offers the international community an opportunity to reiterate these messages. And during these 2 recent visits to Baku, Commissioner Huksa raised the human rights situation with the authorities and met with civil society representatives, including 2024 Sakharov Prize finalist Dr. Ibadoglu. COP29 is also an historic opportunity for peace. Azerbaijan and Armenia have never been so close to overcoming decades of conflict. The conference will be a historic chance for Azerbaijan and Armenia to demonstrate to the world their commitment to peace and to muster the political will to sign a peace agreement. As the European Union, we continue to lend our full support to the normalization process, and we stand ready to mobilize the necessary resources to allow all sides to reap the benefits of a lasting and sustainable peace. Azerbaijan faces important choices, both as regards the human rights situation in the country and the peace process with its neighbor. We should keep our channels of communication open and use our relationship to promote human rights, peace and stability in Azerbaijan and in the whole region.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Commissaire. Nous ouvrons la...
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Let's start with the heads of the representatives of the political groups of the EPP, François-Xavier Bellamy.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. In 3 weeks, COP29 begins in Baku. Ilham Aliyev's city, the butcher of Nagorno-Karabakh, and indeed sovereign Armenian territory. He's attacking Europe. He's attacking France, including destabilizing New Caledonia. I'm thinking of Mohammed Mirzali, victim of numerous assassination attempts in France, and Mohammed and Tural, the brothers of another victim murdered in Mulhouse. They're here with us today. Mr. Aliyev, if you believe so much in your own power, if you believe so much in your own legitimacy, why do you use this violence? Europe has to wake up. Commissioner, thank you for your strong words, but the COP29 is not an opportunity, it's a scandal. It's a disgrace. It's awful for the environment and the climate in this country where we buy our gas. We should be imposing sanctions on the Aliyev regime, and our democracies should be supporting Armenia, which is fighting for peace and stability in the Caucasus. Thank you.
Bellamy, pour le groupe socialiste.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bellamy. Next for the S&D group, Yanis Mianatis.
Αγαπητοί συνάδελφοι, σε λίγες μέρες στο Αζερβαϊτζάν.
Colleagues, in a few days' time, the COP29 will begin in Azerbaijan, where climate change will be discussed. Mr. Aliyev's regime, nonetheless, continues to violate international law. 300 journalists, activists, university professors, and demonstrators in the street are in prison. They do not have access to health care, to a lawyer, or to their family. Mr. Ibodoglu, who is a finalist for the Sakharov Prize this year, is currently in prison, and his health is getting worse by the minute. In Azerbaijan, we have a regime that is destabilizing the entire region and violates international law. The invasion of Armenia and the occupied north of Cyprus in the Organization of Turkic States, the will to take back the enclave. Armenians are displaced. All of these efforts to destroy the rich cultural heritage of the Armenian people, these are things that we must condemn. The international community and the European Union should slap sanctions. We should do everything in our power to make sure that Azerbaijan respects human rights. Thank you.
Pour le groupe des Patriotes pour l'Europe, Jordan.
Thank you very much. Jordan Vadela now for the Patriots for Europe group.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, President, Commissioner, dear colleagues. Following the breakdown of the Nagorno-Karabakh region after the military efforts of Azerbaijan in September 2023, now they are facing the expansionist tendencies of the Aliyev regime. It's been enriched by the money from the EU buying its gas with the help of Sultan Erdogan, and it puts Armenia in an isolated and weakened position in the Caucasus. Since 2023, there has been a misinformation campaign orchestrated by the Baku regime, carried out by the press that has been denounced by the French Interior Minister. It targets our outermost regions, New Caledonia and Martinique. We should speak out strongly against these practices. We should speak out very firmly. Azerbaijan has tried to incite an independentist, anti-French sentiment, calling for violence against goods and people that represent France in our territories. These actions by a foreign power in our overseas territories is a very serious attack on French sovereignty and civil peace. These operations carried out by Azerbaijan are in response to French support to Armenia, the oldest Christian country and a real bridge between East and West. This is something that cannot be ignored any longer due to Erdogan's expansionist tendencies. If nothing changed, we will see what happens to the Armenians in the future. They are worth more than Aliyev's gas. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Pour le groupe ECR.
Thank you very much. For the ECR, Mr. Strutzer.
Domnule președinte, stimați
Mr. President, colleagues, I condemn most earnestly the failure to respect fundamental rights and human rights on the part of Azerbaijan. More and more democratic norms and international standards in the field of human rights are being flouted. Although I welcome business relations with Azerbaijan, we need to be careful about the source of Europe's gas. We cannot accept Russian gas in Europe, which arrives by other routes. We must ensure that we do not jeopardize the energy security of European Union member states. I'd like to express my solidarity with the Christian Orthodox Armenian people and the 120,000 Armenian people who had to leave Nagorno-Karabakh as a result of Azerbaijan's repeated military aggression. The European Union and the international community should ensure that Azerbaijan safeguards the Armenian people's cultural heritage. This requires respect for human rights, stability in the region and Europe's neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I'd like to give the floor now for 1.5 minutes to Madame Loiseau. Thank you, President. In Baku, COP29 will begin, and the Azerbaijanis wanted us to speak about them, so let us do that. And I'd like to thank those who assisted me in drafting the text that we will put to you for a vote, specifically those who came. That means not the ESN, not the Patriots who determined that it wasn't worthwhile to work on this resolution. Now, greenwashing aside, this country only exports fossil fuels. There is something that is doesn't compute. Here we have the sale of fossil fuels. By exporting them, we are actually purchasing Putin's gas and oil. Nice coincidence. Now, let us look at just two names specifically to salute their courage. Gubad Ibadoglu, we rightly made him a finalist for the Sakharov Prize, and Mohammed, who was a refugee in Europe. He is here with us today, and he has been the target of 3 attempts at his life. Now, Mr. Aliyev is responsible for their fate, personally. Allow me also to just speak about the 100,000 Armenians from Nagorno-Karabakh, where there is the cleansing ongoing. The Armenian heritage that is destroyed and the pretext that is being used by Baku to push back peace with Armenia. Yes, we should boycott the COP29 in Baku.
Pour le groupe des Verts.
Thank you very much. For the Greens ALE, Mr. Lagdodinsky, please.
Anar Mammadli has been a known critic of Azerbaijani authorities and a fierce advocate for human rights and environmental justice, also ahead of the COP29. He has been long target of persecution. He was subjected to smear campaigns. They were following him in the streets. In fact, this April, while he was on a way to pick up his own child, he was arrested and driven away. Ever since, he is in a pretrial detention. His home has been searched. He is just one of many stories of this harsh reality in Azerbaijan today. Activists and critics are being imprisoned for executing their basic freedoms. As we speak, dozens of others, journalists like Sevinci Vagivkizki, activists like Bahruz Samarov, are also behind bars for nothing more than their courage to speak out. This is unacceptable, and it is happening just weeks before Azerbaijan is set to host the United Nations Climate Conference. Azerbaijan is not just a regional player. It is a key partner for the European Union in energy and security issues. The President of the Commission even called the country a reliable partner. But with such partnerships comes responsibilities. And this responsibility is to respect the fundamental principles of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. We demand the immediate release of Anar Mammadli, of Gubat Ibadoglu. This is not just about individual cases, it is about the future of this country and of our relationship. Azerbaijan has a choice. It can continue down the path of repression or become democracy. We urge you to choose wisely.
Merci beaucoup, chers collègues.
Thank you very much. I'd like to give the floor now to Mr. Georgiou for the left, please.
Κύριε Επίτροπε, το Αζερβαϊτζάν είναι το μέρος όπου...
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Azerbaijan is a country where the supposed protection of human rights and international law is at cross purposes with the selling of gas. Mrs. von der Leyen said that this country was a reliable partner. Yes, reliable in that contracts have been signed to double our gas imports from Azerbaijan to the EU. She neglected, however, to mention human rights violations and the arrests of dissidents, activists and journalists. Apparently she didn't see any of this. She didn't see the persecution of 100,000 Armenians. She didn't hear about the attempted recognition of Northern Cyprus as well. So these are the countries that are apparently giving moral lessons to others and are defenders of human rights on the international stage. We will not stand with you while you attempt this. We do not want to see a strategic partnership between Azerbaijan and the EU.
Sir Alexander.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sell, please, for the Europe of Sovereign Nations Group.
Im vergangenen Jahr hat die Armee von Aserbaidschan
Last year, the Azerbaijani army invaded and occupied Nagorno-Karabakh. There is destruction of the heritage of the first Christian country on earth. In January, CDU-CSU politicians were investigated, suspected of having received bribes from Azerbaijan. It's not surprising that we're not hearing about the persecution of Armenian Christians in Nagorno-Karabakh. The German Christians are being paid to turn a blind eye, whether in the German Bundestag or in this European Parliament. The CDU has nothing to do with values. It can be bought.
Nous arrivons au terme.
Thank you very much. This concludes the round of speeches on behalf of the political groups, and I will be much stricter with speaking time from now on. I'd like to give the floor now to Mrs. Zhuknevishinin.
This year's Nobel Prize in Economics was awarded to scientists who demonstrated that societies with poor rule of law and institutions that exploit their population do not generate prosperity or positive change. The South Caucasus region is now exactly the place where this theory can be tested. While today it may appear that regimes like Aliyev regime, trampling on the rule of law and democracy, are strong, we need to take the long view. That is why Armenia's shift away from Ruski Mir and toward an European way of life must be a priority for the European Union. This weekend showed the toxic role the Kremlin played in Moldova's elections and revealed the extent of its infiltration in Georgia's current government. We also clearly see how Putin is exploiting long-standing historical tensions between Azeris and Armenians. Therefore, today we agreed among the groups on resolution, and we are very clear. The European Parliament condemns the direction that the Aliyev regime continues to take and expresses clear support for Armenia's chosen European way of life. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sanchez-Amor.
Gracias, presidente.
Thank you, President. There is a traditional tension between regimes that focus on big events and think that this is an event to underscore their political will. But I have bad news. When it comes to this event, this will be a chance to not have an impact on the consequences of the COP29. If we look at Sochi, if we look at Qatar, we have similar examples, and we should not repeat it, especially in these countries that have oil, where the Commission turns up happily and pats people on the back, and yet the police terrorize, silence, throw into jail individuals. In Azerbaijan, for example, the Eurovision in 2021, human rights defenders hope it might be a chance to draw the right attention, but it's actually a chance to just clear out the streets, get out the journalists, and there are not enough witnesses, so there's more oppression. Thank you. Mr. Thionnet, for 1 minute, please.
Avant comme après la tempête, il peut régner un calme.
As just before a storm, there can be calm. When we look at the Caucasus region, we see the Azerbaijanis and Armenians discussing the borders, but this is an endless war being perpetrated against the Armenians. It was started a century ago by the Turks and now pursued by the Aliyev regime. It is the very border of Armenia that could be targeted tomorrow. The Azeris want to see a continual territorial path from the Caspian Sea. The Armenian territoriality was an illusion based on Yerevan adhering to Moscow's position. We should avoid this insincere alliance and help to preserve the territorial integrity of Armenia. For Paris, that means a defense partnership with Armenia, whether it's defense training, mountain training, for example, or weapons. In the Caucasus, peace sometimes means the use of force to end imperial tendencies. Thank you.
Pour 1 minute.
Thank you. For 1 minute, Ms. Gozieska.
Thank you. The war over Nagorno-Karabakh caused a humanitarian crisis, especially affecting children. As Speaker of Parliament in Poland, I invited children who had lost their parents and lost their homes to Poland. They need help. Azerbaijan now controls that region, and Armenian people have no access to food or medicines. As a result, there was an exodus of Armenians from the region who lost everything. Although the conflict is officially over, its effects can still be felt. The international community has a duty to ensure the respect for human rights, especially the rights of children, and continue to provide them the help they need.
Thank you. Mr. Brandstetter, for 1 minute, please.
Mr. President, Mr. Commissioner, if I understood you right, you said COP29 is a chance for Mr. Aliyev to show that there are human rights in Azerbaijan. I'm afraid he doesn't care for human rights. He probably doesn't even know the word. If I think back to Sochi 2014, what happened a few months after Sochi? Did Putin care for human rights? No, he occupied Crimea. And with Aliyev, you also see a clear pattern. He cracks down on anyone who dares to criticize him, and this way we are even legitimizing COP29. The billions of euros he spends in luxury properties in London, Dubai, and where else is not his money. He stole it from the people of Azerbaijan. And what is also a topic, he doesn't only throw people into the prison in his country or kill people in his country, he even does it in Europe. There's the case of Vidadi Iskandali. He was attacked in France by 3 men and died from his injuries. So we have to see Azerbaijan, it's a cruel dictatorship, and it's wrong to give him the COP29. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, chers collègues.
Thank you very much. Marie Toussaint, please.
Nous discutons aujourd'hui.
We are discussing Azerbaijan today because Baku is poised to have an international climate conference, and those who speak out against him are being told to shut up. But we will not shut up, because climate cannot be done to the detriment of human rights. The reality is that we should have boycotted this COP so long that as the Armenian territory is not respected, a peace agreement signed, and the prisoners liberated. Aliyev is muzzling the press to hide its relations with Russia and with the fossil fuel industry, that is ecocide, and cases of prisoners who are being subjected to torture. This is not someone who believes in democracy. Yesterday, the Commission signs new agreements for gas with the regime. There's ethnic cleansing in Nagorno-Karabakh, and this is a huge political mistake. We recognize this, and we have not yet recognized the Armenian genocide. But remembering is not enough. We have to act now to make sure that Aliyev's regime is removed once and for all.
Fernando Barena.
Thank you very much. Mr. Barena Arza, please.
Gracias, presidente, señorías.
Thank you very much, President, ladies and gentlemen. Azerbaijan a year ago started an ethnic cleansing of the Armenian population in the Nagorno-Karabakh, their ancestral land where the Armenians had lived for thousands of years. This was an ethnic cleansing that was preceded by a number of war crimes. Now, this situation has been eclipsed by the magnitude of other crises, but tens of thousands of Armenians have been displaced, and there are political prisoners in Baku as well. The conversations between Armenia and Azerbaijan are a good step forward to peace and stability in the region, but we cannot restrict peaceful protests and the work of the media and other independent organizations. Europe cannot simply look the other way because it needs to make up for the fuel it has lost from the Russian embargo. If it does this, it will have Armenian blood on its hands. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, chers collègues.
Thank you very much. Maxime Emiliano Salini, please.
Presidente.
Thank you very much, President. In September 2023, 100,000 people that lived in Nagorno-Karabakh were deported de facto because of ethnic cleansing, as it has been rightly defined. It is unacceptable that we continue the supplies of gas from a country that deplores the rule of law. Now, we are talking about here, and it's been called an anti-terrorism operation in Armenia, but it's not defining the region correctly. The worst and most serious thing is how cynical, in terms of all of the signs of Christianity in Nagorno-Karabakh are being destroyed. It shows us much about the approach of the Azerbaijani, and it calls on us to have a huge responsibility vis-à-vis these people. Thank you. Mr. Glucksmann.
Thank you, Mr. President, Commissioner, colleagues. You can lock up the opposition and journalists and courageous people like Dr. Badoglu. You can carry out ethnic cleansing in Nagorno-Karabakh, and you can threaten constantly your neighbor Armenia. You can circumvent EU sanctions and export Russian gas to us. And you can receive the entire world at the COP. This is a tyranny, and it is awful that we are so weak in the face of that regime. We should defend the dissidents on our territory. We should support Armenia. We should suspend the gas agreement between the EU and Azerbaijan. We should show that crimes have consequences. We have to demonstrate that we have some principles left and that we're not going to sell them down the river.
Thank you very much. Ms. Marion Maréchal.
Réfugiés de l'Artsakh en Arménie. J'ai encore en tête leurs témoignages poignants.
I still remember the poignant eyewitness accounts. I heard malnutrition, bombing, desecration of churches. How can we not speak out against this ethnic cleansing? But that's not enough. European powers have to put in place strong sanctions against this dictatorship in Azerbaijan. They are censoring journalists and politicians from the Artsakh region. The Commission is behaving in a hypocritical way. It is so pleased with its energy agreement with Azerbaijan. It calls it a reliable partner. We have simply substituted our dependence on Russian gas, and it's being imported into our country anyway via Azerbaijan. We should not allow the COP29 to take place in Azerbaijan if these refugees cannot go back to their country and if the Christian cultural heritage is not safeguarded. The life of an Artsakh refugee is not worth less than Azerbaijani gas. Armenia should not be left to face Azerbaijan's expansionist tendencies and that of Turkey as well. Europe needs to provide support, military support if necessary, to guarantee its territorial integrity and to negotiate peace to the advantage of Armenia. This is a very important for us to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Sardone, please. For years now, we have been watching the tragedy, ethnic cleansing, churches destroyed of the Christians in Armenia. We have seen this policy that has been destructive, exported from Turkey. How would you like to protect this Christian heritage that's been there for for thousands of years? The Armenian people are consistently canceled by new dictatorships that are often supported by jihadists. Now, we have seen that there are these hundreds of thousands of Christians that are persecuted. The European Parliament nonetheless only looks at Islamophobia. For the majority here, apparently, it's fine to be nothing. I do not accept this, however. We need to look up and to defend what we are, who we are, and our Christian roots. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Ostrovicius now.
Commissioner, dear colleagues, first of all, I would like to reassure our opponents for their allegedly unfounded criticism of Azerbaijan. The Council of Europe suspended the country's membership in the Parliamentary Assembly at the beginning of this year, a clear proof. This is the result of a long-term and systematic crackdown by the Baku authorities on political opponents, dissidents, non-governmental organizations, and human rights activists. As we speak, dear colleagues, at plenary tonight, the health of Gudap Ibadoglu is in a very, very critical state, but authorities do not allow him to travel abroad for proper medical treatment. Let me to call on EU leaders who willingly will take part in a COP29 meeting to bring out Gudap Ibadoglu by their planes from Baku. It's the only way to save his life. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, chers collègues.
Thank you very much. Katerina Vieira now, please.
Dear Chair, dear Commissioner, Famil Kalilov, Anar Madaldi, Badrus Samadov, Iqbal Abilov. These are among the ever-growing list of political prisoners in Azerbaijan, a list that also includes Gubad Ibadoglu, shortlisted for this year's Sakharov Prize. Jailed under dubious charges and currently under house arrest, he's being detained and denied the urgent medical care that he requires. Yet, Commission President von der Leyen refers to Azerbaijan as a reliable partner, signaling perhaps that protecting oil and gas imports matters more than upholding our values. We must use the approaching COP29 in Baku to shine a spotlight on Azerbaijan's human rights situation and prevent the regime from misusing the event to whitewash its reputation. Let us, in word and in action, reaffirm that a reliable partnership is one built not just on economic interests, but also on shared values. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lopatka.
Dear colleagues, our Lithuanian colleague mentioned that the Council of Europe opposed to give Azerbaijan credentials for the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. I was one of these 75. We are now blacklisted by Azerbaijan. We are not allowed to enter this country, even on official missions. That is the real face of Azerbaijan. There are currently 6 interstate cases pending before the European Court of Human Rights concerning Azerbaijan. In addition, Freedom House has designated Azerbaijan as one of the most authoritarian states globally. Arbitrary arrests, torture are a common feature in the country, and more than 300 individuals are currently in prison for political charges. At the heart of all this, now the COP conference is coming to Baku next month. And I think we should not give Azerbaijan a chance to create a false impression of a country of tranquility and of respect for human rights. This is not Azerbaijan, is it the opposite?
Merci beaucoup, chers collègues.
Thank you very much. Alessandra Moretti, please.
Poche volte anche in questo.
There are very few times that we have talked about Nagorno-Karabakh here in this chamber, and yet hundreds of thousands have been killed and there have been displaced people. This is a veritable crime against humanity. The Azeri authorities continue to reduce the spaces for CSO, closing NGOs, arresting journalists with trumped-up charges. Now, as all of this is going on, Azerbaijan is hosting the COP29. Baku would like to present itself to the world as an institutional space, and yet there is this gas that is being sold where we are selling off our principles for economic interest. Any interaction with Azerbaijan should be conditioned on human rights. We should continue the suspension of the memorandum. We should also investigate the atrocities carried out in Nagorno-Karabakh and potential sanctions. Then we can work on a peace process between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Jadi, please. Mr. Jadi.
Ευχαριστώ κύριε Πρόεδρε. Καλοδεχούμενη ειρηνευτική συμφωνία.
Mr. President, there is to be a peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan, but it requires mutual respect. We should not turn a blind eye to Azerbaijan's human rights abuses. They are not of recent history. They go back to the Armenian genocide. This conflict remains live, and we have to take into account that Armenians have been expelled, their heritage is being destroyed, international law is being broken, and now the COP29 should not be used to whitewash Azerbaijani crimes. We need to deal with these breaches of international law.
Thank you, Mr. McNamara.
Colleagues, Azerbaijan is a country that I came to know well when I worked in the OSCE, even came to know even better when I was a member of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, just beside this building, where I, along with a lot of others, encountered what was called at the time caviar diplomacy, where very large sums of money were washing around to encourage people to ignore Azerbaijan's human rights record. Because of that, I suppose I wasn't surprised to meet a delegation from Azerbaijan in the Irish Parliament building as streams of refugees were leaving Nagorno-Karabakh. Money talks and nothing talks as loudly as petrodollars. For similar reasons, I'm not surprised that COP29 is going to be held there, and a minister of the Irish government, no less, is going to go over there and explore and expound his environmental credentials to the world. Nevertheless, I think it's also time to be positive and to look at the possibilities that this offers. If there is a possibility of peace, then I would urge the Azeri government to seize that opportunity, because otherwise COP29 will be no more than a farce. I would urge them to seize a possibility of peace with Armenia.
Merci beaucoup, cher collègue. Lena Schilling.
Thank you very much. Lena Schilling, please.
My father is suffering. He's in pain. His heart aneurysm is getting worse. If his arteries rupture, he will die and I will lose my father forever. He's being held hostage by the Azerbaijani government for investigating the corrupt oil and gas sector before the COP. I'm begging the world to save my father. This message comes from Shala, a daughter who's fighting for her father, Dr. Gubat. And she's not alone. There are 300 innocent political prisoners currently imprisoned in Azerbaijan. To the Azerbaijani government, I say this: we will not allow you to greenwash your actions ahead of COP. We will not let you bury the truth. We will shine a light on your violent crackdown on human rights and inhumanity. We demand the immediate release of political prisoners and get Shala's father the medical treatment he needs. Dignity and human rights are something we fight for everywhere.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stier.
Thank you, President. Dear colleagues, changes in the international order had led to the fact that the relations among the states in the South Caucasus have changed, and the Azerbaijan's position has been strengthened. However, this does not give a right to Azerbaijan to violate human rights. They have a right to have their territorial integrity, but not to violate human rights. They need to respect the right of Armenians to return to their home in Nagorno-Karabakh. The EU has well-developed relations with Azerbaijan. We also have an economic cooperation, but you also have a political dialogue, and this is an opportunity to stress that human rights need to be respected. We need to stress our colleagues from the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. I'm also on the blacklist of Azerbaijan because we spoke against their violation of human rights. I would call upon Baku to stop this situation and to achieve peace in Armenia for the benefit of the entire South Caucasus region.
Thank you, Mr. President. Azerbaijan's aggression to force the displacement of 100,000 indigenous Armenian population on Nagorno-Karabakh remains a crime against humanity. While today prisoners of war are still being held captive and Armenia's territory is violated. As far as Azerbaijan's record for human rights and fundamental freedoms is simply deplorable, with wave of arrests and criminal cases against human rights defenders and journalists. We do welcome the Commission's strong words, but we also strongly denounce the President of the Commission statement that characterized Azerbaijan as, quote unquote, trustworthy energy supplier, the Aliyev regime that does not even respect the International Court of Justice order to respect the religious and historical heritage. And a final word. We also deplore any attempt to facilitate in any way the international recognition of the secessionist entity in the occupied part of the Republic of Cyprus as promoted by the criminal regime of Erdogan and Aliyev at the same time.
Merci beaucoup, cher.
Thank you very much. Bert-Jan Royson, please.
Dank u wel, voorzitter, beste collega's.
President, dear colleagues, last year I visited the Lachin corridor where I spoke to Armenians from Nagorno-Karabakh. Guess how the ambassador from Azerbaijan reacted? He posted an image of a gun on X, including a menacing message that I should never show my face there again. This unacceptable incident, of course, is a drop in the ocean compared to what the people from Nagorno-Karabakh have to endure. They're exiled from their region, their religious heritage is being destroyed, and Aliyev's military aspirations towards Armenia continue to be there. And then, of course, there is the population of Azerbaijan itself. Their rights are being curtailed. I think, in particular, of Gubad Ibadoglu. In the meantime, the Council and the Commission continue to see Azerbaijan as a reliable partner, incomprehensible. It's high time to set a different course. We should start by introducing sanctions against persons who flout human rights and threaten the sovereignty of Armenia. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, cher collègue.
Thank you very much. Emma Wiesner, please.
We are approaching the global climate conference, and our focus right now should be on the global existential climate crisis. But in the same time, we cannot ignore what's happening all over Azerbaijan, in Baku and in the host country of the COP29. Azerbaijan has violating human rights for a really long time, but this year they've really been stepping up. Opposition figures, journalists, fighters and civil rights defenders are thrown into jail, just like Gubad Ibadoglu, one of the finalists for the Sakharov Prize this year, nominated for his work on anti-corruption in the oil and gas sector, kept in house arrest in a frightening medical condition. If that wasn't enough, Azerbaijan is also engaged in a war and ethnic cleansing of Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh, a clear violation on international law. And given these violations, it's a shame that the UN framework allows a country like Azerbaijan to host the COP29. Let's have now the world's attention on Azerbaijan, to keep that on the government, to make sure to remind them of their international obligations and make sure that the regimes like Azerbaijan cannot host the COP in the future. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bloss, please.
President, dear colleagues, what a shame. The climate conference
will once again be held in a fossil autocracy. Azerbaijan profits from fossil fuels while repressing its own people, and it should not be entrusted with the presidency of the climate conference. I know, and we know, Azerbaijan's security is watching us right now as we expose their dirty business because President Aliyev is scared of the truth getting out. Dr. Gubat Ibadoglu's case that we all refer here to makes it painfully clear a respected economist who dared to speak out against the Azerbaijan corrupt regime. For this, he was imprisoned, he was tortured, and now he suffers from heart failure. President Aliyev, give your citizens the freedom they deserve and release Dr. Ibadoglu immediately. And to my colleagues, Dr. Ibadoglu is a nominee for the Sakharov Prize. Let's award him this prize and save his life. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, cher.
Thank you very much. Lucas Follas, please.
Chairman, Commissioner, in Azerbaijan, who supposedly a reliable partner, we have the torture of the opponents of the regime. Journalists who criticize the regime are in prison. Armenian prisoners of war are ridiculed and humiliated in Nagorno-Karabakh. Tens of thousands of Armenians have been sent away from their homes, and whatever is Christian is destroyed. At the same time, Azerbaijan calls the northern occupied of occupied Cyprus, and it's invited to the organization of Turkic stations. It undermines the sovereignty rules and of the territorial integrity of a member state of the European Union. Are we going to tolerate this? The European Union, international community, cannot remain without doing something in front of these illegal acts. We shouldn't put the natural gas of Azerbaijan above values and human lives.
Thank you, Ms. Lexman.
Very much. Dear colleagues, the regime of Ilham Aliyev is using the upcoming COP conference to hide its aggressive posture against Armenia, oppression at home, and evasion of the sanctions targeted the Kremlin. But we will not be fooled. That's why I call for the imposition of sanctions against those regime officials responsible for human rights abuses, including the continued imprisonment of Dr. Gubat Ibadoglu and other political prisoners. We must also spell out concretely the cost of Aliyev's continued threats against Armenia and sabotaging of the regime's regional peace. Finally, we need to reduce our energy dependency and especially to stop buying the Russian gas that Aliyev continues to send to Europe. It's also time for our governments to stop selling weapons that are used to threaten Armenia, including my own government in Slovakia. Not doing so undermines not only our values, but also our commitments and efforts to protect human rights and restore peace. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. And now we can open the Catch the Eye procedure. To begin with, Juan Fernando López Aguilar for 1 minute, please. President Omarjee. In the past, we had the Council of Europe, which was a guarantee or guarantor of peace and human rights in Europe, and then Russia was allowed in, and Russia attacked Georgia and also Ukraine, as we know, and via other proxies, it's also attacked Azerbaijan and Armenia. Now, there's an enclave, Armenian enclave in Azerbaijan and an Azeri enclave in Armenia, and there's been ethnic cleansing, and this is a major challenge for Europe. So now there's still ongoing accession to certain treaties. So the EU needs to grow diplomatically so that certain countries can be involved in the COP29. And this kind of...
como Ismail Aliyev, los derechos humanos continuamente en el continente europeo. Gracias, presidente.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sipa, for 1 minute, please.
Dear colleagues, I would like to take the time to do a little sensibility training with all of you on the caveat diplomacy that a colleague of us mentioned. I'm not speaking from personal experience because yet I am not important enough for Azerbaijan to spend any caveat on me, but I have some information on how it works when the state of Azerbaijan wants to bribe you as a member of the parliament. So I want to tell you so you can recognize it when it happens. So once you are in Azerbaijan and you are in a hotel room that is of course fully filled up with cameras and microphones, the first thing that they do is they will lay a golden pen on your table. And when you leave the hotel and you have taken the pen, then they know, okay, he took the pen of gold and he is about to be bought. The second stage after you take the pen is that they send a sex worker to your hotel room at night. And of course it goes the same way. If you let this person in, then they know you can be bought. And then of course the third stage is the briefcase of money that some people here are unfortunately familiar with. So watch out, don't get bribed, and thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much for these recommendations, and I'd like to give the floor to Gregor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm very glad that I can hear such a wide condemnation of atrocities, ethnic cleansing, that Azerbaijan is committing against the nation, the oldest Christian nation that once was a kingdom, the first Christian kingdom in the world. But probably not everybody knows, not everybody understands that Azerbaijan has an ally that it can always count on. And this is the state occupying Palestine. This is the state of Israel, selling guns, selling drones that make it much easier for Azerbaijan to execute its deadly program. And this should be much easier for you condemning ethnic cleansing in Nagorno-Karabakh to condemn the state occupying Palestine.
Thank you, colleague.
Atrocities, committing genocide in Gaza.
Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. You ran over quite extensively there.
Non, nous arrivons au terme du...
That is the end of this debate. I'd like to thank everyone who's been involved in this very lively debate, and I give the floor to the Commissioner, highlighting the fact that the condemnation of Azerbaijan was quite unanimous amongst the speakers who took the floor.
Monsieur le Président, honourable members, this debate has shown that very strong attention on the human rights situation in Azerbaijan remains absolutely crucial. As the European Union, we are determined to use the momentum of COP29, which has been obviously criticized, but now it's a fact that it will take place, to reiterate our expectations that Azerbaijan honors its international human rights obligations. Retaliation for exercising freedom of expression is a clear violation of international human rights law. All those arbitrarily detained should be released and must have full access to the medical care they need. It is thanks to this Parliament that these messages are passed loudly and clearly. We have to reiterate our concern over the human rights situation in Azerbaijan as regards to freedom of expression, assembly and association and democracy. We also have to continue to appeal to Azerbaijan to facilitate international access to Karabakh, to allow for the independent monitoring of the situation on the ground, and especially to allow Karabakh Armenians to have a right to a safe return. It is true, yes, it has been mentioned, indeed, that we have relationships with Azerbaijan in the energy sector and a few other areas. But this, and I think this should be a very clear message also before the COP29, that this does not and should not prevent us to strongly voice our concern and condemnations. And I think we all have heard these condemnations and this concern here. It has been unanimously expressed in this debate, and this has to be fully taken into account. We also condemn comments on and actions taken by Azerbaijan authorities against some member states, and particularly also in the case of the Republic of Cyprus. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Before I close this debate, I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Maria Zakaria for 1 minute to ask for a minute on the catch the eye procedure. You have the floor, madam.
Σας ευχαριστώ.
Thank you very much. I received an email from the Azerbaijan's ambassador in Belgium. I was CC'd along with another 20 MEPs, and it was a reply to a question sent by another MEP that I did not receive. And there was a whole threatening attitude in his email. I imagine that I was CC'd into this email because I added my signature to a resolution calling for political prisoners to be freed. I will not be silenced. I will not be subjugated and forced to silence. I seek for political prisoners to be set free, to be released. The EU cannot work with the countries that have been blatantly violated international law and human rights, and we must stand by the side of the Armenian people that are requesting to go back to their lands.
Cette proposition de résolution pour
I have, as the debate is closed and the vote will be held on Thursday, we can now move on to the next item on the agenda, Commission Statement. People's Republic of China's misinterpretation of the UN Resolution 2758 and its continuous military provocations around Taiwan.